In this video, I'm going to walk you through what Claude Code is and also help you set up your first session. I'll also go through some of the important features of Claude Code and also provide real use cases. We will build one project from start to finish, which is a landing page with a working AI chat assistant in it. Before we begin though, what exactly is Claude Code? Claude Code is Anthropic's agentic coding tool, which is basically a fancy way of saying it doesn't just answer questions about coding, it actually does the work. You tell it what you want in plain English and it can read, write, and edit files. It can also run commands and build things, checking in with you along the way. The most important distinction for anyone that's watching is that you do not have to be a developer in order to use Claude Code. Claude Code was designed to be accessible by anyone to build things such as websites, apps, and automations. The only thing that you need to know is how to describe what you want clearly. And this is why I've included all the prompts and files that I'll use in this project in the description below. Alright, so how I want you to think of Claude Code is as one helper robot that can live in 3 different rooms. It's basically the same robot with the same brain, just different rooms with different tools available. The first room is the terminal, and that's basically on your computer. It's a black screen where you type, you tell Claude what to do in words, and it reads your whole projects, edit files, and run commands all through text. This room also has special toolbox that the other rooms don't have, which are basically tiny single job tools that you can hook together in an assembly line called piping. It's also the only room where you can write a script and have the computer run all the steps by itself. And you can also set a scheduled task for the middle of the night or build an assembly line that automatically checks new code before it ships. In order to install Claude on your terminal, you would have to follow the instructions on this page right here, depending on whether you use Mac or Windows. For Mac, you would just basically open the terminal, which I've done so here, and then you would copy and paste this line into your terminal to install it. I already have Claude on my computer. In order to initiate Claude Code, you would just type Claude, which this is what it would look like. And then you will see a security guide that looks like this, and it's basically asking you whether it can trust your computer and your folder. So I'd press enter to confirm. And then finally, you'll see something that looks like this. I'm not going to go into a lot of details on how to use Claude Code Terminal, so I will make a separate video for another time. This video is more focused on the Claude desktop app, which I'll get to eventually. The second room that Claude's robot basically can live in is the Virtual Studio Code app. It's basically like an editor room right now. Terminal was more like a plain room. It's the same thing, but now it's living right inside your code editor instead of a separate window. You can basically see the before and after of any edits that it's making right next to the file for the project without having to switch screens. It's a nice middle ground, which is comfy if you already work in an editor, but it doesn't have that special assembly line toolbox that the terminal has. A lot of developers like using Visual Studio Code because they can access all the files that they need locally on their computer and also work with Claude at the same time on the right with the session that opens up while having their file opened up to also insert and edit anything that they need. And again, similar to the terminal, I'm not going to walk through in detail how to use Claude in Visual Studio Code. I'll save that for another video. We're now going to go into the Claude desktop app. And if you're curious on how to install Visual Studio Code and Claude Code, I'll include in the description below the links to Visual Studio Code. In order to install Claude on Visual Studio Code, you would go to extensions right here. And then what you'll want to do is search for Claude. I already have it installed, but it'll look something like this. And similar to the terminal, I'm not going to go into so much detail on how to use Claude in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to jump into the Claude desktop app, which is what I'll be using for this video. All right, so this is the third room that I was talking about, which is the Claude Code desktop app. And I like to think of this as the fancy room, the clubhouse. This is the best option for people who just do not want to deal with typing commands or anything technical. It was designed to be very user-friendly and also to provide a lot of visuals. So if you're a very visual person, this is the best place to be. The cool thing with the Claude desktop app is that you can still see side by side a before and after view of your project. You can also run several sessions at once in different tabs. Finally, it also has a built-in terminal and editor, so you never have to leave this view. The coolest thing is that it's the same Claude agent everywhere. Your settings and memory carry over no matter which room you're in, and you can even hand a task from the terminal straight over to the desktop app if you start there and wanted the more user-friendly view later. Another quick caveat, Claude Code comes through a Claude subscription, so you'll either need a Pro, Max, or Enterprise plan. Pro is the entry point, and that's what I use, and it's enough to follow along with everything in this video. Max gives you higher usage limits and priority access if you end up using Claude every day. So when you open Claude Code, you'll see something that looks like this, and this is called a context window that basically provides you data on how you're using it. So it has an overview section which shows how many sessions you have, your current streak, longer streak, your peak hour, your favorite model, how many messages, total tokens, and active days, and all of this is in 30 days. You can switch it to 7 days or all in general. It also has a model section where you can see which model you use and how many tokens exactly those models use. And this is great so that you can monitor token use and make sure you're not draining your tokens really fast, because obviously you want to pace it out with your projects and to not run out in the middle of a very urgent task. The next thing you'll see is the option to connect locally to your computer. It gives you the option of local, a cloud environment, and also to be able to set up a remote control session right here. I'll talk more about this later in more detail. And then finally, it also gives you the option for an SSH connection. The next thing you can do is also connect it to any folders locally on your computer. So here I have it connected to the Claude Code project folder, which is what we're going to be using to create our landing page today and to save it into that folder. You'll also see the following right here, which says main. This is part of Github, and I'll talk about this later in more detail in my video. Next, it has a place for you to start writing anything that you need and prompting, so you can describe a task, ask a question. You can also go into different modes. So there's a manual mode, accept edits mode, there's a plan mode. So let's say, for example, you do not want Claude to go ahead and start building something immediately. You want to plan and brainstorm with it. You'll select the plan mode. The other thing that you have here is the plus icon right here. This is where you can add files, add a folder, import GitHub issues, /commands, which again, I'll talk in more detail later, connectors, and then finally something called plugged in. And again, also with plugins, I'm going to talk about it further along in my video. You also have the option to go into voice mode, where if you do not like typing, you can just talk and record what you want to say to Claude and then press enter. This is great if you just do not want to type, and it's a lot faster to work. The next thing that you have here is the different models that Claude has. Some models use up way more tokens than others. So for example, Opus and Fable are great for complex tasks and projects, and those are going to use up a lot of tokens. So you'll want to make sure to use those very sparingly. The one that I typically start with is Sonnet, and then the one that's for very lightweight tasks you can use is Haiku. And then finally, the next thing you'll notice is something called effort. So it's basically a way for you to drag and slide whether you want Claude to work faster or smarter. So if I'm using the Sonnet model, and if you notice if I go down, it says effort is low, so that's going to work very fast. But if I drag it further along, it goes to medium, and then it goes to high, and now it's getting smarter basically. So the effort's going to be more, extra, max, and then finally it goes to ultra code, which is the smartest. And again, the more to the right you drag it, the more tokens it's going to start using. And now before we dive into our project, there's also the sidebar right here. So this is the code section. You'll notice a place for artifacts. So this is where you can store any files or anything you've created in the past. If you want to save it and refer to it in the future, you can basically say, please save what I just made into the artifacts section. There's also a customize section right here. So this goes into your settings, your account, privacy, other details. It also has capabilities. So just go through the settings and see what works best for you. And then for Claude Code, you'll notice that it has also like classify session state, switch models when a message is flagged, code appearance. So you can set that and toggle however you like, and just kind of some technical updates that you can choose right here. And then next, you'll see the customize section, which is the skills, connectors, and plugins. Again, I'm going to go into more details on this, but this is where you can access them if you need to. All right, so let's start. I just opened Claude Code inside a new session. The first thing you'll want to do is make sure that Claude can access any files on your computer. And in order to do that, you'll select local right here to set it up. The second thing is you'll want to make sure that it's connected to a new empty project folder. I just named mine Claude Code project and it lives on my desktop. So you can go ahead and do that too. The next thing you'll want to do is make sure to select plan mode right here. Now I'm going to insert the prompt that we will be using, and I'll include this prompt in the description below. Build me a one-page landing page for a business called AI Treasury. It should have a headline, a short section of what's included, a pricing block, and a button that says Get Started. Keep the design clean and modern. All right, so as it's planning, you will see pop-ups like this, and it's basically asking you more questions on what you want. So for example, for this question, it says, what should the pricing block show? No specific pricing details were given. So here there's an option for a single plan, 3 tiers, placeholder pricing, and then they also included a other section where you can type more information. So I'm going to go ahead and choose 3 tiers. The second question was what visual style or color scheme fits AI Treasury, and I'm just going to go with light and minimal, but you can choose basically any other colors that you want. And then finally, it says what format should the deliverable be in, and the first option is a single static HTML file, and then the second one is HTML with separate CSS and JavaScript files. I'm just going to go ahead with the single static HTML file for now. All right, so it's now saying that Claude has proposed a plan, and you can see the plan has been shown here on the right. So this is one of the pros of using the Claude desktop app. You can basically see what it creates side by side as you work, which is really nice to have. So now you can just review the plan that Claude proposes, and depending on how you feel about it, you can either reject it, revise it further, or accept the edits. You'll notice this option right here, accept and auto mode. You can basically choose between accept and allow edits, where you basically allow permissions as Claude builds it, or you can choose accept and auto mode. There'll still be here and there some permissions that Claude will prompt you even if you use auto mode. And this is just a safety precaution on their end. So I'm going to go ahead and select accept and allow edits. Now, as it's building it, just remember the first draft is obviously never the final version. And this is where Claude Code actually gets good with the back and forth with you. So you can ask for color scheme changes. You can say, oh, I want like a better headline, and you can update the text for the plan however you like. I didn't do that right here in order to keep this video short, but you can do that depending on what you build. All right, so these are the permissions that I was talking about. As you can see here, it says allow Claude to start static site. And what it's basically telling you is that it's going to start building something locally on your computer and asking for permission to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and select always allow. All right, so you can see here, Claude has started building it out and has given me a preview right here of what it's building, which is pretty cool. And you can see here that there's multiple windows open. So that's the chat window, and then there's the sample preview of the landing page, and then also the plan window that shows you the initial plan. So this is why I love Claude desktop app, because you can do stuff like that. You can basically work in, multiple sessions and see kind of like how your project is coming together and becoming live. So Claude is done and has built the landing page. Before I expand to look at it, I wanted to go through a little bit what is in the plan that Claude proposed. Claude said it would build a navigation bar, a headline section, a what's included section, a pricing blocker, and a footer. So let's see if that was done. So yes, you can see the navigation bar right here, the hero headline section, the everything you need section, a pricing area, and then finally the footer, just as it promised. And this looks pretty good for something it built in, like a couple of minutes, I would say. Now you'll notice that the features, pricing, and get started button does not work. So that is something that you need to provide more input for, which the plan initially did not have that. So that's why Claude did not build it. So this is where you would go into the iteration mode, where you would refine and ask Claude to make those updates. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And this is the prompt that I'm using. Update the website so the features and pricing navigation links smoothly scroll to the respective sections on the page. Also connect the Get Started button to a functional contact form that allows users to submit their information successfully. All right, so Claude is done and says both updates are live in the index.html file. So let's check it out and see. The first one was the smooth scrolling. Okay, so that's not working for me, so I'm going to have to fix that. but let's check the form. All right, so the form is working. I can see a section to fill out my name, email, company, the plan I'm interested in, and any extra notes that I have to submit. So let's go back to Claude and make sure that the smooth scroll is working. So in order to refine, you can just talk to it like with natural language. So I'm just going to say the smooth scroll navigation is not working. Now, while we're waiting for Claude to fix the smooth navigation, you do not have to wait for it in order to continue to do more work on the same project. You can do something called parallel sessions in Claude Code, and this habit can really save time once you're comfortable with the basics. All you have to do is select these three dots right here and select fork, and it'll open a new window, but still part of the same project where you can continue with other updates you would like to make. Now, the next thing about Claude Code that I would like to show you is something called MCPs, Model Context Protocol. This is what lets Claude connect to apps that you use, such as Google Drive, Slack, or any project management tool to any existing projects in Claude Code. And in order to connect your apps, you'll go to the sidebar right here, select Customize, and then select Connectors. And you'll see that I have existing apps already connected. And if something's not connected, you'll see the status right here saying Connect. If you want to find more apps, you can do that by selecting the Add button, either by browsing connectors that Claude already have connections with, or you could also add a custom connector. I'm going to use Google Drive as an example, and I already have Google Drive connected, so I'm going to close this window. What I want Claude Code to do is to create a Google Sheet file in my Google Drive that records all form submissions from the landing page. And now here is the prompt that I'm going to use for that. Create a Google Sheet spreadsheet in my Google Drive that automatically records every submission from the Get Started form on the AI Treasury landing page. Each form submission should be added as a new row, capturing all submitted fields along with the date and time for each submission. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And now while waiting for Claude to create the Google Sheet spreadsheet, I'm going to go back and check on the smooth navigation scroll and whether that was fixed or not. So it says here that I need to allow permissions. So that's one thing you want to keep in mind when you're doing parallel sessions, is that you want to go back and forth between each session to make sure Claude doesn't need anything from you. So I'm going to select always allow. All right, so Claude is done fixing the smooth scroll navigation. It also goes into more details on what was causing the issue. So let's go ahead and test that out. I'm going to select expand and then select features and then pricing. So now we know the smooth scroll is fixed. So since the smooth scroll is fixed, let's go back to checking up on the Google Sheet spreadsheet. So I'm going to go ahead and allow permissions here. All right, so Claude has created the spreadsheet for me right here, as you can see. So this is what it looks like, but I'm going to go back to Claude. However, it's saying that because my landing page is a static HTML file with no server, so we just created this basic visual file. We do not have a server to save any kind of data that the landing page gathers. So one way to bridge this gap is to create a Google Apps script web app bound to this sheet. And it says here, I can't deploy that step for you. Google requires you to click through the deployment consent dialog yourself. So here it provides steps that will take you about only 2 minutes to do. So it's saying open the sheet and select extensions and app script. And then it says delete any placeholder code and paste the following. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And then the next steps is saying click deploy, new deployment, select type web app, and then execute. So let's go ahead and follow these instructions. So I'm going to go ahead and select extensions and then select app script. And then you'll see something like this pop up. So let's just go ahead and remove all the code that is in here. And then we're going to copy and paste the code that Claude provided, which is this one right here. And then now I'm going to select deploy and then select new deployment. And this is where it's asking me to select the type. So I'm going to select web app. And then I'm going to provide a basic description of what this is. So I'm going to type form submission AI Treasury page. And then here it's going to list out the account that I'm using to execute this deployment. And for who has access, I'm going to select anyone so that Claude can use this deployment. And then I'm going to select Authorize Access. You'll see something like this pop up. So I'm going to select Advanced, and you'll see here Continue only if you understand the risk and trust the developer. So that's me. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to Untitled Project. I forgot to label the project, but basically what you're doing here is allowing yourself to use the app within the project to see, edit, create, and delete any Google Sheet spreadsheets. So I'm going to go ahead and select Continue. And then now you'll see two links right here. Go ahead and select the link to the web app and go back to Claude and paste it. All right, so Claude is now saying it'll wire the submission handler to post to the app script endpoint. So again, I know all of this is very technical, but basically what you're doing is linking the form submission button on the landing page to your Google Sheet spreadsheet in order to record all your form submissions. So Claude is done. You can see it's testing a submission right now, and it just submitted a form. So that's cool. So you can see how Claude can work real time for you. And as we can see here, it has collected submissions from the test that Claude was running, which is great. So that's awesome that our form is working. So now anytime any users access the landing page and submit information into that form, it's going to get recorded directly into your Google Drive in this Google spreadsheet. All right, so far we have confirmed all the buttons on the landing page is working, and the form submission also works. I'm going to switch to Opus because I'm going to be building a more complex AI chat assistant for the landing page. So now I want to go ahead and add a working AI chat assistant to the page so visitors can ask questions about AI Treasury and get real answers pulled straight from the business information section in a Claude project file that I'm going to provide now. So this project file is called CLAUDE.md, and MD basically stands for Markdown. You usually provide Claude this file whenever you need to include specific information that would be helpful for whatever that it needs to build. And this is what the Markdown file looks like. I use Visual Studio Code to open it, but it's just basically a text file that provides the specific information that the AI chat assistant that we're creating will need. So it has a About This Business section and a Brand Voice section, business information that would be used by the AI chat assistant that we're creating, formatting preferences, and then also a What I Always Want. I'll make sure to include this Markdown file in the description below so that you can use it and update it to your liking. I saved this Markdown file on the local folder that was created, Claude Code Project. So make sure after you've downloaded this Markdown file from the description below, you have it saved on the folder, and then you can see that it's, Claude's going to be able to access that file because it's already connected to the folder. Now I'm going to go ahead and say the following. Please read the Claude Markdown file. It will provide you business information for an AI chat assistant we're about to build. All right, so I told Claude to read the Markdown file and to list out everything that it learned. And it did. As you can see here, it provides the information again that was from the file about the business, brand voice, what business information there is that the AI chat assistant can use, formatting preferences, and what you always want. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is select Plan Mode, and then I'm going to enter this prompt right here. Add a simple chat widget to this landing page that lets visitors ask questions and get answers based on the business information in our Claude Markdown file. Connect it through a back-end function to Claude's API. Do not expose the API key in the front-end code. Use an environment variable for the key. Now, why is the last sentence important? API keys basically stand for Application Programming Interface. They're keys that are a unique secret alphanumeric string that is used to authenticate a program or a developer making a call to an API. It basically acts like a digital ID card and password that allows you to grant permission to access specific data or services. Think of it like a hotel room key card. It gives you access to the room. So you're using the Claude API key to jumpstart and create the AI chat assistant on your landing page. But you do not want users to have access to that key because that key is basically access to your Claude account. So in order to make sure that it's protected, you do not want that API key to show on the front-end code of the site. And you want to use this in an environment variable. So now I'm going to go ahead and press enter so that Claude can start planning. So Claude just asked a couple questions. It's asking what backend runtime do we want to use for the chat endpoint use. I usually just go with what's recommended. In this case, because the page is a current static site served by Python, I'm going to select the Python recommendation and I'm going to select next. Then it's saying which Claude model should be used to answer chat questions. So it's saying Opus that's recommended, but I'm going to go ahead with Haiku because it's cheaper. Alright, so Claude has proposed a plan as we can see here. So just go through and read through it. Obviously, it's very technical, so do not get overwhelmed. But it's basically just showing you information about how it's going to build this out. And here you can say the environment, it's going to use Python, and then it's going to use the API key, which you're going to have to grab. And then here's the approach. It's going to do the backend and also front end updating for creating the AI chat assistant. So I'm going to go ahead and select accept for now. Obviously, we can revise and fix anything that's needed later on. All right, so Claude is almost done. The last thing that it'll need is the API key that I mentioned. So we're going to have to use the terminal for this part right here. So it provided the code, as you can see here, it says export Anthropic API key equals, and this is the part that you'll need to update. And then this is just Python authentication. So right now I'm going to show you how you can get your API key. All right, so to get your API key, you'll need to go to this site right here, and I'll link this in the description below, but it's basically the Claude console. You can find all technical information right here. So go ahead and log in. And then once you have logged in, you'll see something that looks like this. You'll select API key. And then just go ahead and create a new API key and just enter something like AI chat assistant for AI Treasury site. And I'm not going to enter an expiration date. So I'm just going to put never and then select add. So this is your API key. You'll notice that I have it blurred out, and that's because you do not want to get hacked to your Claude account. So you want to make sure that this is safe. So you are technically using your Claude paid account for users live on your page to be able to ask information. But the key point is it doesn't allow you to get hacked. All right, so now that we have our API key, we'll come back to this shortly, but I'm going to go ahead and go into Claude and copy the code that Claude provided, and then go into any kind of notes that you have, like I have this one right here. And then what you want to do is update this section right here that starts with an S and ends with a ... So that's the part you're going to enter the key that we got initially from here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy key and then go into my notes again and paste it to override that section. All right, so now that we have the full code and API key included, we can go into the terminal window. Before I can copy and paste the code though, I need to make sure that the terminal window is pointing to the Claude Code project folder. And the reason why is because Claude has already established a server Python file in here that will help with the connection. So we want to make sure the code works correctly. We have to make sure that it's pointed to the folder. And there's two ways you can go about this. The first way, which is the easy way, is to just right-click on the folder and select New Terminal, Add Folder, and you'll see a new pop-up window open that is specifically pointing to Claude Code project. You'll notice that doesn't show here, right? The other way you can go about it is by just pointing the file link in the terminal window. So you would do that by starting with CD, which is prompting the opening of a file location. And then you're going to find where it is pointed to. So in my case, it's in my desktop. So it will go with the computer's user folder and then the specific account that I'm using, and then the desktop, and then Claude Code project. Now, obviously, the first way I showed you is easier, which is to just right-click and select New Terminal, Add Folder. I'm not sure how Windows does that, but at least for Mac, we have that option. And now you can go ahead and copy and paste the code. Once you have copied and pasted the code, you'll see something that looks like this, AI Treasury server running on, and then it gives you the link to a specific web address, and it says Anthropic API key set. Now go ahead and copy this address right here and open it in your browser. All right, so I just opened this in my browser, and I'm going to test out the AI chat assistant right now by asking, what is your refund policy? All right, so it came back with the following. We offer a 14-day money-back guarantee on both our starter and growth plans, along with more information. And again, remember, this is pulling down from that markdown file that we included earlier. That's basically like the knowledge file for this AI chat assistant. Another thing to learn about Claude Code, the tokens on your paid Claude account is separate from the API credits that it will be used up by any projects that you have going. And a lot of times API credits do not use up a lot. It depends really on how much traffic you're getting to the website or the project. So obviously if there's like a ton of people asking questions, you're gonna have to top up more. But if this is a test project and you have you're just testing, it's not going to use up a lot, and 5 is plenty. The next cool thing about Claude Code that I'd like to show you is something called skills. Skills are basically reusable workflows, and you can think of it like recipe cards that teach Claude exactly how to perform specific tasks. Instead of having to re-explain everything, like let's say you completed a project and you like it so far, and you know that you're going to make similar projects to it, you can save a skill for all the specific steps that you did and all the reiterations that were done with Claude, so that the next time you create the project again, you do not have to re-explain everything. Claude will basically automatically apply whatever that's needed. And because they function globally, they can be used in your standard chats inside Claude Word and also within Claude Code. Skills are also a markdown file, so when you start a task, Claude only reads a brief summary of the skills to see if it applies, keeping your context window clear, and then it only loads all the full instructions if needed. Now, to check out where all your skills would be saved, you can go to the sidebar right here, select Customize, and then Skills. You'll see that I have a couple right here, and the one that I'm going to show you is Company Research. Now, this is the skill that I created so that anytime I want to research a company on demand, Claude will come back with specific information in a set format for me. So the thing that I ask Claude to look up for whenever I prompt it is company overview, the key people from the company, the details, the recent news, and an executive summary. And then also there's a specific section for instructions. So it says here, search the web for current information. If a section cannot be confirmed, note it rather than guessing. Keep each section concise and scannable. And then if I go back, you'll see a couple others that I have here. This one right here, which is YouTube script, is basically asking Claude to create a proper template for all my YouTube scripts. So I say, hey, I have a script right here. Can you please write it out into a specific format for me and refine it however it's needed? And it's nice because all I have to do is provide Claude the script, and then Claude will come back with a nice format for the script for me. Now you'll also see the option to add skills, and there's 3 ways to do that. The first way is to create with Claude. So you can say, hey Claude, let's create a skill on this project right here. The second way is to write the skill instructions yourself. And finally, the third is to just upload a markdown file that you have existing on your computer, and Claude will basically save it. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a skill for this landing page since we like everything we've done so far. And let's say in the future, if I want to create the same project again, I can. So we're going to go back here, and I'm just going to say, please create a skill based on this landing page that we just created. All right, so Claude is done. It did ask me a couple of questions before it started drafting the skill. The first one was, when you use this skill in the future, where should the new landing page project be created? I said new sibling folder, so basically I want a new folder always created whenever a new project is prompted instead of using the existing folder Claude Code project. The second one is, should this skill always use the same Python server pattern, or should it adapt the backend to match the new project stack? And I said adapt to project's context because obviously I don't know what I'm going to create in the future and it might be very different from the current landing page. So I said adapt to project context. Finally, it asked, do you want to test cases, evaluation setups for this skill, or just wipe check it together? And I just said wipe check it. And wipe check is basically, it would try to test run the skill and create a completely new project. Now, I'm not going to go through that part in here, but basically whenever you set up your skill and you are done, Claude will make sure to test out that skill for you to make sure it's working correctly. So as you can see here, the skill was saved and it was basically created in Claude. One thing I do want to point out, it did included CSS and JavaScript files for future projects. We did not have it in this one. We only did one single HTML file, but that's nice because if you're going to make more complex projects, you will want to have 3 split up files, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript instead of just one single index HTML file like what we did. And for those of you who do not know, CSS files styles are basically the design of your website. HTML is the backbone, the skeleton and structure of your website. And then finally, JavaScript is mostly in charge of functionality and triggers. The next thing I want to talk about now that you know what skills are Claude plugins. They're basically packages of extensions that include skills, sub-agents, and event hooks that connect Claude to external tools, databases, and APIs. They transform Claude from a text chatbot into a specialized automated assistant capable of interacting with the live web, checking code errors, and automating complex workflows. To access plugins, you can do that either here. You can select plugins, or you can go to your sidebar right here, select customize, and then select plugins. You'll notice that I have the small business plugin already connected, so I'm going to show you what it is. It says here that it includes pre-built small business workflows, including payroll planning, month-end close, weekly briefs, and growth campaigns using the app QuickBooks, PayPal, HubSpot, DocuSign, Google Suite, O365, Canva, and other connected tools. You approve every step that touches money or customers. So this is one of Claude's built-in plugins, as you can see. So it has all kinds of skills right here, which is pretty awesome. And also connectors, so all kinds of apps that a lot of small businesses use. So this was specifically designed to help small businesses use Claude more efficiently in things like payroll, data analysis, and weekly briefs. If I go back, you can also see there are all kinds of other plugins. So if you go to Add Marketplace and select Browse Anthropic Sources, you can see more. You also have the option to add from a GitHub repository a plugin that someone created. GitHub is a place where software developers can share all kinds of things that they make. And if someone made a really cool plugin there, you can add that plugin into Claude using this option. Now, if I close this window and go back to add, you can also upload a plugin that you created on your own, or you can also create with Claude, and you'll do that through natural language, just telling Claude what you want to create and typing it out. And then finally, you have the option to browse it right here, so you can see all the other curated plugins that Claude has created. So I just showed you the small business one. There's a productivity plugin, an enterprise search plugin, sales, finance, data, legal. There's so many, as you can see. If I select the productivity plugin, you can see what it is, but here it can basically manage tasks, plan your day, and build up memory of important context about your work. It can sync with your calendar, email, and chats to keep everything organized and on track. So yeah, that's plugins on a nutshell. Let's move on. Another cool thing about Claude Code is / commands, which are basically kind of like keyboard shortcuts that let you manage context, switch models, and run agents directly from your session. In order to access the full list while you're in a session, you'll just type / and you'll see a bunch of them pop up. So for example, schedule, which is to create a scheduled task that can be run on demand or automatically on an interval. By the way, which is asking a quick side question without adding to the conversation. What's also really cool is that Claude will also basically automatically make a command for any skills that you make. So for example, the company research skill that I showed you earlier, Claude already made a command for it. As you can see here, it says Anthropic skills. So that's how you know it's a skill that exists in your library. And it says research any company on demand, used when the user asks to research a company. So that's cool because what you can do is basically put the / and then select company research and then type in the name of the company that you're interested in learning about and then press enter. And this is so much easier than having to be like, hey, can you research this company, which is like one full sentence. So it's a little faster. Now I can show you one that you can test out, which is MCP. And as you remember, MCP is basically in charge of all the connections that we have for any apps connected to Claude. So if I just press enter on this, you'll see that it automatically pops up all the connectors. And this is so much easier than having to go back through the sidebar right here and then select customize and then go to connectors all the way here. So you have those keyboard shortcuts in your session, make use of them. It definitely helps getting things to move faster. The next thing that you can do in Claude Code is also commit any of your projects to GitHub. Now, what is GitHub and what is commit? GitHub is basically a cloud-based platform where developers can store, share, and collaborate on any projects or code that they build. A commit is basically just another way of saying saving or a snapshot of changes made to that code over time. Think of a project on GitHub like a shared digital document, and a commit as a permanently logged version of that document so that you can return to it anytime. It kind of works like Google Drive with all your documents and how you can share it with your team. Very similar, but this time it's just for code projects. Each project is housed in something called a repository, which is basically a digital project folder that stores all code, documentation, and history. It also has collaboration tools such as pull requests, which allow developers to review each other's codes before merging it to the main project. And then finally, GitHub is also great for cloud backup. It can keep a lot of your projects safe and accessible from any computer. So it's always a best practice to connect all your projects on Claude to GitHub. That way you have it saved on there, and you can also use it as a way to collaborate with your team. Now, to save this project to GitHub, all you have to do is just say save this landing page on GitHub. All right, one thing I do want to point out, my Claude is already connected to GitHub. If you do not have GitHub connected, it's going to prompt you to log in or create an account with GitHub. So just follow the instructions that Claude provides you. And basically what it'll do is just prompt you to open GitHub on your browser and create an account or either logged in. And then it'll also provide you a code that you will use in order to connect Claude with GitHub. Now, I have previously saved a repository for this project, so that's why Claude's asking me. The GitHub repo this project points to, AI Treasury landing, doesn't actually exist yet on GitHub. I'll need to create it before pushing. What visibility should it have? So I'm going to go ahead and say public so that anyone can basically use this landing page if they want to. If you are not going to share this with anyone, if it's not meant to be for the sake of sharing and you're supposed to be private to you or someone else on your team, then you would just select private. So I'm going to go ahead and select public. All right, so Claude came back saying my landing page is now live on GitHub. Here is the link. And I'm now going to go ahead and select the link. It gives me two options to open it beside this chat within Claude or to open in the default browser. I'm going to select open in app. And there we go. This was the repository that was created for our project. You'll notice a README file in here, and it's basically a file that provides information on what the project is. So it has a title, a paragraph that provides information, what's in here. So it's saying what's in this repository, which is the index.html file, which is the landing page itself, the server Python file that helps with the AI chat assistant, and then also the Claude Markdown file we created, which provides brand voice and business details. It also includes requirements, so what you need to run this project, and also how to set it up. And then now what you can do is continue making updates to your landing page. Maybe you want to refine the design or include more functionality. And then once you've made a couple of updates, you can go ahead and commit the new changes to the repository so that you have a backup and a version history going. And all you have to do is basically just type commit the new changes to the GitHub repository, and Claude will do that for you. Now, one thing I want to point out as a quick FYI, you'll notice something here called Fixed Dev Server Auto Port has one extra commit for auto port selection. GitHub is offering a PR link if you want to merge it into main later. It's basically telling me I need to do a port fix and also merge it into the main branch. So remember how I told you can have the main branch for the project, which is the main branch, and then you can have separate branches for the project, which is kind of like reiterations of the project, like not your official version of the project. So I just went ahead and asked Claude to do that. I said, please merge this to the main branch. And then it went ahead and did that. It also went ahead and deleted the sub branch so that it no longer exists. So again, GitHub can have the main branch of your project and also sub branches of the same project, which are basically other versions of your project that you can have on the side that will not affect the official project. The other thing that it checked for was to make sure that no secrets went up. So it said, I checked server Python, read the Anthropic API key from the environment only. And it says git ignore already excludes the environment. So it's basically saying, do not worry about your API key that was not included into your GitHub repository. Now, the final feature about Claude that I would like to talk about is the remote control feature. This allows you to bridge your local terminal session with a browser or the Claude mobile app. This means you can kick off a coding task on your computer and safely monitor or approve changes or interact with your code from your tablet. To start a remote session, if it's a new session, all you have to do is open your terminal to your project directory and run Claude Remote Control. If it's an existing session, all you have to do is type / and then remote control. Now, one thing I do want to point out, remote session is very buggy and I find that it disconnects a lot, so I do not really use it, but you can test it out and see if it works for you and whether you like it or not. And one other thing, it also has local limitations, so your computer must remain awake, connected to the internet, and the terminal application cannot be closed. So that's another reason why I don't really use it, because, my computer has to be running unless I do eventually get another second computer, that older one that I do not mind having running. For now, I do not need it, so I do not use it. And that's it. That's Claude Code in a nutshell. Please let me know in the comments below which features you found pretty cool, or if there's anything you ended up building in Claude Code. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel. I post weekly videos breaking down AI tools and concepts in plain English. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.